This is Women's Tech Radio,
a show on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network interviewing interesting women in technology, exploring their roles and how they're successful in technology careers. I'm Paige.
And I'm Angela.
So Angela, today we're interviewing a friend of mine, Megan Bigelow. She works for Jama Software as a manager there, and she tells us some about her journey into that. And then also we get to talk to her a bunch about founding and then the impact that PDX Women in Tech has had in her life and in the Portland community.
And before we get into the interview, I just want to mention that you can support Women's Tech Radio by going to patreon.com/today. Women's Tech Radio is one of Jupiter Broadcasting's many podcasts. And by going there, you can donate monthly and for any level that you want. So patreon.com/today.
And we get started by asking Megan what she's up to in tech today.
So actually what I'm up to is a little minor, simply because I am on maternity leave, but I do work for Jama Software as a manager of customer support, and those folks are quite technical. So I have my hands in that technical work quite a bit when I am working, but I've been out since the end of November and returning in March.
Very nice long leave. That's great that they're going to do that with you.
Yeah.
And I also know that you are a founder of PDX Women in Tech.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I'm very active in that. And we actually just had our holiday party last week, and we just posted photos today. So it's pretty exciting. It was a monumental event. We had 7 different women in tech groups join us. And it was a record turnout of nearly 250 people, hosted by Puppet Labs. It was phenomenal. And we've had rave reviews from people. So PDX Women in Tech meets monthly. It's a networking group, but sometimes we spice it up by having speakers or having some kind of activity. But the purpose of the group is simply to provide a platform for women to meet other women or supporters of women in tech. And this is not specific to purely technical roles. It's for women who work for a tech company, who are interested in working in a tech role. And it just has, over the last 4 years, has just been an amazing experience of people building relationships, finding jobs, making friends. We have local tech companies that host us monthly. And it's exciting, and it's growing every month.
Wow. All right. Well, that's quite a big thing that you're doing there. I don't know where to start on this one. I guess, how did you wind up at a technical company? Let's start there.
Yeah. So actually, I didn't start my career at a technical company. I started my career in a tech role, like in a tech field. I was actually help desk support when I first started. But over the years, I actually was working for Portland General Electric and just had one tech role after the other. When I was actually on maternity leave for my daughter back in early 2013, when I had found out that Salesforce was moving some of their operations to Portland, and actually Hillsborough. And because I had started out as a help desk technician and I had a lot of experience in tech, the experience was right to lead their help desk, which was quite a large operation. We had 50 employees supporting, I guess at the time there was 15,000 Salesforce employees. And so I actually that was the first tech company I had ever worked for. And the way that it typically seems to work, at least in Portland, is once you've worked in a tech company now, like the rest of your career is in a tech company. And so from there, I landed a job at Jama Software, managing the customer support team, which is externally facing support. So I get to work with paying customers, which is very different than internal customers. That's how I kind of started in working for a tech company.
So help desk was kind of your intro.
Yes. It was.
So as a career help desker, you've got to have some sort of awesome help desk story.
To be honest, I don't know that I have an awesome help desk story. I mean, I will say that probably the most epic help desk stories I have are from working at Salesforce, just because of the scale. And one thing that comes to mind is, like, there was a sales kickoff, which of course happens every quarter. And there was some video that the sales team, which is huge at Salesforce, they were trying to play this video. I can't remember the platform that they had, but it actually failed. And of course, that resulted in a huge amount of calls to the service desk, which is what the help desk was. I remember we would have, for probably 2 hours straight, we had about 15 to 20 people deep in a queue of calls. And of course, being in the help desk, you're the ones that respond to things, but not necessarily the people that fix things. And so it was just an exhausting situation, and really not a good situation for the sales kickoff.
Yeah. Help desk is a really interesting role because it is like, it's a semi-technical, like hard technical position, if you will, but like you also have to have all these awesome people skills, and you might not get to fix things. I had the very interesting experience at one point of being help desk for help desk software.
Oh my.
Wow.
It felt very meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the calls you'd get were really interesting because they were almost always from technical managers who were really infuriating that I wasn't the guy who could just fix things.
Right. Exactly.
Cool. So you're at Jama, you're doing this cool stuff. And where does PDX Women in Tech come into the picture, and why?
Yeah, so PDX Women in Tech, as I mentioned earlier, was founded 4 years ago out of a coffee date that I had with Casey. At the time, her last name was Jones. Now it's Tonsfeld. Her and I had actually never met before. We were sort of, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of women out there have this experience where you're just like introduced over email, and then you decide to meet up for coffee sight unseen. And I happened to be at the Grace Hopper Women in Computing Conference. I guess that was in 2010. Gosh, I'm losing track of time, but maybe 2011. And so I was taking a break from the conference, and I met up with her at the Starbucks nearby, and we just started really lamenting about how hard it is to meet other women in tech, because I was astounded at the fact that I had to go to a conference in Portland to meet a lot of other women also in tech. And many of them didn't even live in Portland. It just didn't feel right. I was like, there's got to be another way to do this. And so her and I just came up with this brainchild of, well, why don't we do something about it? And we gave each other little assignments after that meeting of, okay, I'll check LinkedIn and see if anything exists already. I'll search Google. And we came up with nothing. I mean, we obviously came up with the very technical groups like Women Who Hack, Women Who Code, which are incredibly valuable and have a very, very great place in our community. But we couldn't find anything that was sort of more general, which I didn't feel like I could identify with either of those two groups at the time. Mm-hmm. So we came up with PDX Women in Tech. We had our first happy hour in January of 4 years ago at what used to be the H2O, which was a little bar downtown. It was no host. We had about 10 people show up. And then from there, we've blossomed into this group that has 1,000 members and anywhere from 80 to 120 people that attend each month. It just grew. It was crazy.
Just blows your mind, huh?
Yes. And then, of course, with the holiday party, I mean, there's a need. And we just happened to be sort of at the time when people were ready for that. And it's working.
So your what would be your, what is it called? Like a phrase that, a mission statement. What is your mission statement?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, we don't really have a mission statement, but we do have something that I wrote up 4 years ago that seems to still resonate, and I'll read it to you. I guess we call it our purpose.
Yes. Okay.
It's PDX Women in Tech exists to celebrate professional women in the Portland metro area who work with, manage, lead, or have an interest in technology. Whether you are developing event-driven, non-blocking applications in Node.js, or studying technology strategy for a Fortune 500 company, or anything in between, come join us.
Okay.
I would call that a mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's intentionally broad, and that seems to work because we get a lot of diversity at the meetups, and it creates a really supportive environment.
And what is your primary method of getting women to come? Like, is it is it hosting meetups? Do you use meetup.com literally? Do you use Twitter? Or do you have somebody, a staff member that seeks women out? How do you guys find your audience in Portland?
Yeah, so it's changed over the years. First, we were just using LinkedIn when they had a sort of an event app within LinkedIn, but then they deprecated that. And now we rely on our newsletter. We have over 1,000 people. I mean, of course, that's grown. It didn't always used to be that big. Mm-hmm. And we use Twitter a lot, and we use Meetup, which Meetup I will credit as being what really changed the game earlier this year, because we went from having probably 40 to 60 attendees a month to now on average 100. And I think it's because we are reaching a larger audience through Meetup. But to get to that point, I think it was a lot of just sort of word of mouth. I mean, we had, like I said, very few people that came. In fact, I was trying to seed the group originally with women that I worked with. Unfortunately, none of them showed up, or maybe one or two of them. But as we had a couple of people start coming, and then they started talking to their friends. I mean, every month when I meet people, I always ask them, how did you hear about the group? And I've heard some amazing stories. Like, many of them have said, oh, well, my boyfriend found it and told me about it. Or I was at this other event and they announced that the PDX Women in Tech meetup was happening. And then, of course, through hosting at different tech companies, you just get a lot more exposure through that. So I would say it's been a journey of different things, but what's working, like really working for us right now, is Twitter, our newsletter, and Meetup.
Like, are you finding companies receptive, women receptive? Like, how is it working with retention? Like, I guess, like, I'm always interested in like what is happening around that space, because we see a lot of people like in and out through the doors, and they'll come once, especially, so full disclosure, I helped Megan organize the holiday party, and I've been involved. This is our third party for Women in Portland. Yeah. So very exciting that we're up to
WHIP, Women in Portland.
That's right. Yeah.
That's great.
Watch me whip.
Oh no. Oh,
yeah,
no.
I know, right?
You didn't.
I'm trying to think of something that runs with Nene that's like tech related.
I'm not going to help.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Megan might help, but not me. So like, how do we, what's the impact there? Is it important for people to come back, or is it just kind of important? I think the holiday parties and the mid-year parties, so we do one in June and one in December. The importance that I see there is that it's there. Like, just the fact that it exists seems to help people. But yes. I think your organization has a bit more meat to it. And like, what do you think? What do you think is that impacting? Do you feel it impacting you personally?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things there, and I'll try to address all of them. So there have been a variety of participation. There are people that come occasionally, very occasionally, once, and there are regulars. Like there's a solid group of people that have come every month for 4 years. And, we, as I'm sure you do with your group, we welcome however often people choose to come. So I agree with you that the fact that it's there and it exists and it continues to happen is probably what's important to people. So it's just, everyone kind of has their own sort of, they have life changes and they have other things going on that prevents them from coming, but we see them occasionally, and that's always great. The one thing that I do notice, and I've had a couple of people say this to me, is that, oh, well, I love your group, but I don't attend because I'm not looking for a job. And, my response to that is, well, that's great that you're not looking for a job and that you're really happy where you are. But the intention of PDX Women in Tech is not necessarily to help you find a job, although that is an amazing byproduct, which I'll answer about how that's affected me in a minute. But I mean, building your network, if there's anything I can sort of impart to people, is it's not about finding a job. It's about finding people that have common interests that you can connect with, that you can make friends with, and maybe those relationships will result in career advantages for you later. Because you never know when you're going to need the help. And if you wait to come to these meetups when you're looking, you're going to have a much harder time simply because you haven't built those relationships first. Now, not to say that if you're looking, you shouldn't come. Like, we want people to come because things can happen. It's just the more time you invest in your network, the more relationships you have to call on when you are looking. And that's something that I have done on many occasions, whether it's I actually am making a conscious decision, I want to find a new job, or I didn't even know that there was this opportunity and someone approached me about it. But I mean, the career path that I've taken over the last 4 years since PDX Women in Tech started has been entirely because of PDX Women in Tech. It's just talking to people and fostering those relationships. And honestly, it doesn't take that much time to build a relationship with someone, but you just want to make sure that you're fostering that as you go. And so that you're not sort of finding yourself in a situation where it's like, oh, now suddenly I need my network, because your network will help you whether you need a job, whether you need encouragement for a project or a new idea, or you just want to commiserate about a shitty day at work. Like, they're there for you. So anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, totally.
And what exactly what does one of your meetups look like? Is it structured? Is it loose? Do you force people to talk to somebody that's, on the other side of the room, or not force, but,
Right.
because some people will just be shy.
Right, exactly.
And may not get the full experience or benefit out of the situation if they're not kind of coerced to do so. What does it look like?
Yeah, so we've lately tried to switch things up. So our standard vanilla meetup is there's no structure. We are just there for 2 hours. There's food and drink, and you just come and sort of use your own self-motivation to meet other people. The good news is that the group, a lot of people that go are very the outgoing people are really can catch the people who are sort of standing back, not really sure of what to do. And so typically that tends to work, where people are like, oh, hey, how are you doing? I haven't seen you here before. Now, because we do realize that there are folks who really do need help to network, we have done a couple of different formats. And the one that sort of stands out in my mind is the activity that we had at Smarsh in November, because we had the event right before Thanksgiving. We wanted to do something around gratitude. And so we had a gratitude activity, which was something we just came up with off the cuff. It was just like a 2 email exchange. And we're like, okay, let's just try it. So the way that it worked is everyone got a piece of paper when they walked in, and there were 5 lines. Go talk to people, 5 different people, and find out what they're thankful for this season. And then there was a 6th line that was, okay, now that you've talked to 5 people, who are you thankful for? And it has to be someone at the event. Write it down and go talk to them and tell them that you appreciate them. And it actually sounds like kind of a corny activity. And who knows how I was so like, okay, I have no idea how it was going to be received. It turned out to be the most heartwarming thing. I mean, we all felt like there needed to be a collective group hug at the end. So the way that we ended that was collected everything and then drew 5 of the forms, and we had Smarsh swag. And so when we randomly selected, we read the 6th gratitude, which was, who at this event are you thankful for? And I would say 4 out of 5 of those were, I am grateful for so-and-so because I was standing in the back of the room and she came and talked to me when I didn't feel like anyone else would. Like stuff like that, where people were just like there by themselves and someone else came up to them. So it's kind of it was awesome because it was a combination of, okay, let's get out and talk to people you don't normally talk to. And then, let's it turned out to be like, let's appreciate them for that.
So I have like a twofold question around that. I think, first of all, I think that activity is fascinating, phenomenal. I totally want to run it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal it.
Good.
So one, are you that person? Are you the person who will go up to people in the back of the room and say, hey, welcome. Are you not, why are you here? Whatever. Or do you break the ice? Are you an icebreaker? And either way that you answer this, has it been an intentional move for you to build a community that encourages and includes that?
Yeah. Okay. So I am the icebreaker when I can. Unfortunately, the events have been getting so large that it's been hard for me to do that. But I try to carve out, even if it's just a couple of minutes, to walk around and kind of identify people who may not be talking. But what I do in the absence of that is I spend a lot of time at the front, like checking people in, and I'm very, very welcoming at the front. So if I see someone I don't know, I try to engage with them as much as possible and help orient them to what's going on. But historically, I was that person who was walking around, like seeking out the people who are not part of a group, or even seeking out the people who I hadn't met before. And I just went up to them and started talking. And I mean, the perfect icebreaker for me is, how did you hear about the group? And then I get to tell them the origin story, and, the conversation ensues. I will say, though, that before I started PDX Women in Tech, I wasn't that person. I actually didn't even realize that by starting this group that I was sort of embarking on my own journey of becoming a more outgoing person. And I have actually heard from other people that by attending and by meeting new people and being learning how to be comfortable in situations with folks you're unfamiliar with, or coming up with things to talk about when you just met someone, is actually a skill in and of itself. And for myself and for some of these other people I've talked to, that's actually enabled them to grow and get jobs that they weren't sort of like thought they could get, or they are better at interviewing. So it was an interesting thing for me, because I didn't realize that I didn't go into this thinking, okay, well, I want to start this group so that I can get better at speaking sort of on the fly, or even public speaking. It just sort of happened. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful that it's done some amazing things for other people. And you had another question, and I think I've already forgotten it.
You kind of answered it in there, but I guess more specifically, it was like, once you started doing that, like, was it an intentional move on your part to kind of build that into your culture for PDX Women in Tech?
Yes. Yeah. So once I kind of, okay, this is how these things are going to go. And the sort of, I guess, collaboration and comfort that I want people to have, I realized that I was sort of contributing to that by being that person. Now, I don't know if even if people aren't looking to me as an example, I want to be an example. And so, yes, I want this group to be incredibly inclusive. And the only way to sort of ensure that happens is to be inclusive myself. And that seems to have attracted the other people that want to be inclusive, and then everyone feels included. And I've got great stories from people who are like, this group has changed my life, or I can't believe how welcomed I feel when I'm here. A lot of other meetups I go to, it's not like this at all. And honestly, I don't go to a lot of other meetups, so I don't really know what they're like. But yeah, so yes, it's intentional.
Now, have you thought, just based on how successful PDX Women in Tech has been, about starting chapters or satellite city locations where similar meetups occur?
I mean, I would say it is maybe crossed my mind, but I haven't taken any action to make that a reality. I guess I mean, selfishly, I have a very small amount of free time. And so
Sure.
I tend to just do what I can to keep it going. I guess sometimes, I don't know, maybe you guys can relate to this. Sometimes it feels like, okay, as long as I can just get, we can just meet every month, right? And then I just sort of I'm waiting, or I'm open to someone who approaches me and says, you know what, I like what you have going on. I want to do this in San Francisco or wherever.
Right.
And if that person wants to kind of run with it, I would totally be open with that.
Right. No, I get it. Because I go to an open sewing night every month, and it's literally the only time I get to sew because I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
But I really try to go because of the social aspect and just the fact that I can get away from my kids, even though the only thing I work on is projects for the kids, you know, so I don't actually but I enjoy doing it, and it's just a little break. And so, yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. And it's like the November event was 2 weeks after my son was born.
Wow.
And I was like, I have to go because I want to go and I want to see these people and I want to share in this exciting thing that just happened in my life. And I have to say that I don't have a lot of other things in my life that feel as authentic and that feel as like supportive. So it's just like, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else other than at home or there.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, finding that passion space in that community it's so vital.
Yeah.
Just to who we are as humans, I think. And then also, women in technology, there's just a lot of impact there. So, we're kind of getting to a good point here. And we like to ask the question, what are some tools that you use day to day, especially as a manager in a tech company? Like, what are some of the things you touch daily?
Like literal tech, like literal tools or?
Yeah, I mean, do you use a screwdriver or are you using Google Drive? Like whatever, like anything that's in your tool chest, be it digital, be it, like maybe you're like, well, I always have to meditate every day.
Oh, got it. Okay. I wish I meditated every day. Gosh, that's kind of a hard question. I mean, I don't feel like any of my tools are all that glamorous, but as a manager, this is not that exciting, but what I'd learned is texting my employees what turns out to be sometimes the best way of communicating. Now, I don't text them when they're sitting next to me, but just creating that channel of like, hey, you can reach me anytime and I will respond quickly has really changed the relationship I have where, I mean, I manage a support team. So coverage is critical, as you guys can imagine. And so it's really important if I know that someone is going to be late or if someone isn't going to be there. And by having my phone sort of, and they know I'm like going to answer, and they know that they're all under my do not disturb. So they'll wake me up if they need to call me or text me. Has just really created a space where it's like we can communicate and solve things quickly when we need to, or I can help them if they need help.
Now, have you looked into messaging programs like Telegram or Slack or IRC?
I've used Slack for other things, and I love it. And I think that would be a really good way of sort of another approach. But yeah, no, I haven't.
Yeah, I think there is something extra personal about text messaging.
Yeah.
Like I have some teams where we manage and we have like layers of text communication where it's like email sits in the very top and then we come into Slack and then some of them will hit Facebook Messenger, which I don't really like.
Yeah, no.
And then some of them will text me.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem like the ones that text me is that really vital connection.
Right.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I've found because we've established that like it's okay to text me anytime or for any reason. I've actually had a couple of them reach out to me during my maternity leave just to say, hey, I miss you, or hey, they're really good. They're not asking me about work related stuff, but it's like we're just checking in. Mm-hmm. And it makes me feel good, and hopefully it makes them feel good too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women's Tech Radio. Remember, you can find links in the show notes at jupiterbroadcasting.com. You can also find us on Twitter at HeyWTR.
Shoot us an email at WTR@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Let us know what you think of the show or anybody you'd like to hear from. And also you can find us on iTunes, leave us a review there or anywhere else that podcasts are distributed. Thanks so much for listening.